Public education is considered one of the great lights of modern Western civilization. Who could question the value of an institution that provides free and mandatory education for all? But just as with many institutions of our time, the idealized image of how these institutions should function deviates greatly from the reality of how they actually operate. If public schools promoted critical thinking, stimulated intellectual curiosity, and fostered healthy citizens, both physically and mentally, their value would be unquestionable. However, behind the carefully constructed image by the bureaucrats managing the system, a much darker situation is revealed. Some may consider this heresy, but a study of history reveals that the intention from the beginning has been this way. Educational systems in the West were modeled after the factory-style education introduced in Prussia in the early 1800s. Albert Einstein, who achieved a level of genius rarely seen, did not attribute his intellectual development to mandatory schooling. Reflecting on his school years, Einstein observed that after completing his final exams, his interest in the field he would later revolutionize was practically dead. Einstein believed that one of the main flaws of mandatory state educational systems was their forced teaching style. After more than a decade of indoctrination in the school system, few emerge with a great thirst for knowledge or curiosity about the many mysteries of the world. But if we cannot rely on our school education to generate the critical and curious minds necessary to protect society from the actions of corrupt authorities, the question arises, can conventional media play this role? While skepticism towards this institution has increased in recent years, disdain and distrust toward traditional media have a long history. Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most intellectually free and curious minds in history, was also not a fan of conventional media. Richard Malcolm, a professor at the University of Chicago in the first half of the 20th century, found it ironic that while we had freed ourselves from the geocentric view of the cosmos, we had fully immersed ourselves in an illusory view of the world created by conventional media. But why do conventional media often choose deception over truth? The 20th century journalist Walter Lippmann personified this view, referring to the masses as a confused flock and suggesting that one of the main functions of the media is to keep this flock in its place as passive spectators, not active participants in the organization of society. For some of us who are not part of the elite, those who wish to exercise tyranny will do so because tyrants are active and passionate, and they will dedicate themselves in the name of any number of gods to putting shackles on the sleeping people. Neil Postman, a prominent American academic, writer, and cultural critic specializing in the effects of media and technology on society, explains how television and entertainment have directly contributed to the intellectual decline of the population. According to Postman, television transformed all cultural aspects of society into superficial and entertaining experiences. He argues that our politics, religion, information, sports, education, and commerce have become pleasant accessories to the show, largely without protest or public attention. Postman points out that technology always brings about social changes, and it is naive to think that it only has positive effects. Ignoring that technology introduces a program of social change, believing it to be neutral, or assuming it always benefits culture, according to his interpretation, results in a form of advanced stupidity. This mistaken perception makes it difficult for society to understand how television influences the way we think and interact with the world. Postman argues that the way we understand reality depends largely on the media used in a culture. He says that we do not perceive nature, intelligence, or ideology as they are, but as our languages and media allow us to. For him, our media are our metaphors, and these create the content of our culture. Therefore, the best way to understand a culture is to analyze how it communicates in its time. Television, as the dominant medium, was the center of command for the new epistemology, indicating that no audience is too young, poor, or uneducated to be excluded from its influence. Furthermore, everything of public interest passes through television, meaning that our understanding of these issues is shaped by its biases. Given its universal accessibility, television becomes the primary medium through which society acquires and interprets information. In a world where learning was based on books and verbal communication, television transformed it into a simplified visual experience focused on entertainment. Postman points out that one of television's great limitations is its inability to foster deep reasoning. Unlike written text, which demands intellectual effort, television offers a passive experience. In reference to reading, he explains that the reader must adopt a serious intellectual disposition, confronting only the text, with reactions being isolated and intellect relying on its own resources to engage with the abstractions of printed words without the help of visual or social elements. In this way, reading is a serious, essentially rational activity. For Postman, intelligence resides in the ability to think abstractly and handle concepts without the need for visual representations. Reading fosters analytical and critical thinking, which television does not allow. In a culture centered on images, information is presented in fragmented and simplified ways, hindering deep reflection. Postman notes that engaging with written language requires skills such as classifying, inferring, and reasoning, in addition to identifying lies, confusion, and abuses of logic. In contrast, television and entertainment tend to present information incoherently, incompatible with logical thinking. He describes how television transforms everything into a spectacle, making entertainment the predominant format for presenting any experience. This simplifies complex issues and weakens the audience's ability to address serious matters. Postman illustrates this transformation by mentioning an important cultural change. Before the era of television, people remembered public figures for their ideas and words, not for their appearance. In a print-based culture, these figures were primarily recognized for their speeches and writings. He notes that before television and media, it was unlikely that the first 10 presidents of the United States would have been recognized if they crossed paths with a citizen on the street. Postman asserts that when we think of figures like Nixon, Jimmy Carter, or Einstein, what comes to mind is an image, a face, not words. The ultimate consequence of this image-centered culture, according to Postman, is the decay of intellectual culture and the risk that any form of meaningful culture may disappear when a population is distracted by trivialities, and cultural life is redefined as a perpetual cycle of entertainment. Serious public conversation is reduced to childish language. In the end, a people becomes an audience, and their public affairs are transformed into a media circus, endangering the nation and making the death of culture a real possibility. Additionally, the domination of entertainment also influences social interactions. Postman explains that Americans no longer speak to each other, but entertain each other. They do not exchange ideas but images. They do not debate proposals, but celebrity faces and advertising. He also analyzes how this entertainment culture transforms the very notion of being informed. Rather than facilitating substantial information, the media offers superficial information that creates the illusion of knowing while distancing the audience from true understanding. The danger lies in treating information as entertainment because we lose our capacity to understand what it truly means to be well-informed. Postman makes it clear that he does not imply that television news deliberately deprives Americans of a coherent and contextual understanding of their world. What he means is that when information is presented as entertainment, the inevitable result is that television news entertains but does not inform. This phenomenon is far more serious than just the lack of authentic information, as we are losing our understanding of what it means to be well-informed. Postman mentions that while societies have shown themselves capable of overcoming misinformation and false opinions, it is still unknown whether a culture can survive when it reduces its understanding of the world to brief formats like a 45-minute news broadcast, or when it values information only for its ability to entertain, as when it is measured only by the amount of laughter it generates. Moreover, he emphasizes a crucial point about the relationship between politics and entertainment in the television era. Television turns the political process into a spectacle, where the appearance of candidates takes precedence over their true substance. According to Postman, politics becomes a form of entertainment where the business does not seek to promote excellence, clarity, or honesty. Postman argues that television does not allow us to understand the true nature of a politician. Rather than presenting a nuanced image of their abilities, it focuses on superficial aspects like appearance and attitude. This presentation distorts reality because it prevents us from judging leaders based on essential criteria, such as their negotiation skills, imagination, executive knowledge of international affairs, or understanding of economic systems. Television does not help politicians create a real image, but encourages them to present the image that the public wants to see. The reason for this is almost entirely linked to image. Not because politicians are obsessed with presenting themselves as the best, but because television promotes that need. Postman notes that it would be rare for a person not to try to project a favorable image of themselves, but television gives a bad reputation to image. The politician does not only offer their own image to the public, but presents themselves as an image for the public. In his book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business, Postman argued that while Orwell's totalitarian stage had not materialized, society was heading toward the dystopian scenario described by Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, where entertainment becomes the dominant ideology. According to Postman, culture is transforming into a vast field of spectacle, which could be seen as pleasant, but it is precisely what Huxley feared. The greatest threat to culture is not the deprivation of information, but the total embrace of entertainment, leading to intellectual and cultural decay. Silent individuals do not perceive the cultural decline, as it seems almost insignificant to them. They do not consider it a problem because they enjoy their entertainment, making it a kind of cultural death. In Postman's book, the dystopian visions of Orwell in 1984 and Huxley in Brave New World are confronted. Orwell fears a society controlled by the deprivation of information, while Huxley fears a society where the excess of entertainment and meaningless information leads to passivity. What Orwell feared was that people would be deprived of books, while Huxley feared there would be no need to ban a book because no one would want to read it. Orwell feared that truth would be hidden from us, while Huxley feared that truth would drown in an ocean of insignificance. Both authors reflect on the dangers of social control, but while Orwell warns of a future where governments impose restrictions, Huxley presents a vision where society itself becomes complicit in its passivity. In Orwell's work, truth is a scarce commodity, and its concealment is the instrument of power. In Huxley's world, truth loses its value due to the overload of trivial stimuli, so people stop seeking it. Both Orwell and Huxley warn us from different perspectives about how the manipulation of information, whether through oppression or through overabundance, can lead to dehumanization and the abandonment of critical thinking, which is crucial for a healthy society. Orwell feared we were becoming a captive culture, while Huxley feared we were becoming a trivial culture. In Brave New World, Huxley argues that defenders of civil liberties must always be alert to tyranny, but underestimates the power of human distractions. Unlike Orwell in 1984, who presents control through suffering and fear, Huxley imagines control exerted by pleasure and distractions, which can be even more insidious because it keeps people complacent and uninformed, away from anything with true substance. Orwell feared that what we hated would destroy us, while Huxley feared that what we loved would ruin us. Postman suggests that Huxley's vision is perhaps the most prophetic, as it warns that people will worship technologies that undermine their ability to think. Huxley adds that, in the end, what troubled people in Brave New World was not that they were laughing instead of thinking, but that they did not know why they were laughing or why they had stopped thinking. Postman's message is deeply relevant today. If in his time television was one of the main drivers of intellectual decline, today new technologies have expanded our possibilities for entertainment. In some cases, it could be said that we are already living in a Huxleyan dystopia where pleasure and distraction serve society without us being fully aware of it. Postman had anticipated cultural decline, and today it is possible that we are so immersed in technological and entertainment distractions that we fail to perceive the magnitude of this change. As we are swept away by immediacy and superficiality, we risk losing sight of the deep values and structures that sustain an intellectually and culturally healthy society. The speed of information consumption and entertainment could be clouding our ability to critically reflect on the world around us. Just as we first learned from Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, it is not the great tragedies that keep people in place, but the satisfaction of their superficial desires. And finally, as we learn from Neil Postman, we are amusing ourselves to death. Culture has become a spectacle, and what entertainment offers is not just leisure, but a way to control the mind. And so, my friends, we reach the end of this intellectual journey. But remember, the end of a video is not the end of thought. In a world where the noise of entertainment numbs us, the true revolution is to wake up. Do not let distraction define your destiny, because knowledge is not just power, it is freedom. I am the being of knowledge, and until we meet again, stay curious, stay awake, and above all, is keep questioning everything. See you on the next journey.